One of the big questions people have when they're assembling their toolkit is deciding between the DRDT and the C-frame tool. Now, if you're completely not familiar with the process, both tools are used to dimple the dimpled impressions in the exterior skins of the airplane. So they're both used on the outside of the airplane. They're different concept in the design of the tool. So the DRDT uses compression force on the end of the frame, and the C-frame uses an impact force. The reason that the DRDT was designed was to be quiet. The C-frame is definitely the noisiest tool in the shop. So if noise is a factor, if you have neighbors, or in the case of the designer of the DRDT, he was living in a condo, and his adjacent condo mates were complaining about the noise of the C-frame. So that's why he designed the DRDT. So the DRDT uses a compression force at the end of the ram to apply the pressure to the male and female dimple die, making that dimpled impression in the aluminum. Puts about 3,000 pounds of force on the end of here, so it has to be pretty beefy to be able to stand the spread of that. Now also, the DRDT is not designed to rivet. It's not designed to set rivets. What happens if you put that kind of force on it without the alignment of the male and the female dimple dies is it tends to move, to bend toward its weak axis and go sideways, and so the rivets will smear over sideways if you use flat sets to set flush rivets in this, or universal head rivets, either one. So the advantage of the C-frame is, while it's noisier, it can also be used to set rivets, and I'll cover that here in a few minutes. So it's kind of a dual function tool, where this is a single function tool. This weighs about 65 pounds. It's about twice as much money as the C-frame. You won't find that either of them does better work than the other. Because of the impact tool, it does engage the male and the female angles on the springback dies just a little bit better. So you may find just a little more crisp dimples with the C-frame. With the DRDT, one thing that people like about it is that there's a stop right here where every time, I don't have it set up yet, but you'll see that here in a minute. Every time you go down up against that stop, everyone is exactly the same. However, because of that flex and that spring in the frame, the dies or the dimples aren't quite as crisp, but you're really picking nits then at that point to be able to tell the difference. You have to really look closely. So essentially, they do the same quality of work. Again, this one is about twice as much money as this one. This is 65 pounds, so shipping weight is a lot more, where this is 14, I believe, pounds. This one, you have to build a taller table to support your skins so that they're held 90 degrees to the axis of the tool, the axis of the dimple dies, where this one's about 3.5 inches tall. Some people use like foam blocks. Some people recess them into the table. So there's different ways to do this. Because it's so heavy, you don't pick it up and put it up against the floor like you do this one. And dimpling of the skins is a fairly small percentage of the airplane building process. So usually it lives under the table or up against the wall in my case. So let me do a little rearranging, and I'll come back and show you the individual tools. Okay, so I have a male and female 3/32 dimple dies and a test piece, which is just one of the pieces out of our little cell phone holder practice kit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the male die in the bottom. You always want the male die in the bottom so that the female die doesn't get full of chips and things as you're using it. Then just remember that the exterior of the airplane is always down as you're moving it around. Then I adjust it so that as I push down on it, it over centers and it flexes the frame about 1/8 of an inch or so. You can do a little bit harder than that, but it gets to be hard as you're pushing down doing the dimples. So no material in between there, about 1/8 of an inch of flex. I wouldn't measure that. I guess you could, but it's more of a feel to make sure that the arm is springing, because you want to get the maximum amount of force you can in any squeezing type of tool to really get the geometry of the male and the female die spring back angles to engage right. The 3,000 pounds of force that a squeezer type tool will make is just barely enough to get a good quality springback dimple. So I'm putting it in here. I bounce on it twice to make sure I get it seated well. And just go along and dimple your holes as such. So obviously very quiet, obviously very repeatable. That's the advantage of this tool. Let me switch over to the C-frame and I'll show you the difference there. Okay, now I have our C-frame tool, same dimple dies. I have a couple other accessories here that I want to show first before I do the dimpling. So I'm going to take out this piece that's in the bottom here. This we call a 401 receiver. It has a 401 shank just like on the end of a rivet gun, and then it has a hole in the end of it that receives the dimple die. So this comes with the C-frame. You can also use this in your rivet gun with a bucking bar, with a hole in the bucking bar to set rivets with. So that's an advantage of having this tool, is you also get this piece. We do also sell those separately. The ram that you hit with the hammer and taken out to show you that you can use any rivet set that you use in the rivet gun, 401 rivet shank, and this happens to be an 1/8 inch cup. So you can put that in the end of there. You can use this piece, which is designed to back rivet wing skins with, but it also fits, we also designed it so that it fits in the top of here. The reason is, if you are doing some small pieces, riveting them together, it's really hard to do with a rivet gun and bucking bar. It's hard to do that out in midair. It's hard to concentrate on the bar and the rivet gun at the same time. Small pieces want to move around. Where doing it here, you can set it up. I'm obviously just emulating two pieces of material here. Let's say you have a row of rivets in a floor rib with seatbelt fasteners, for instance. You can set that all up, bring it over here, and just inherently the tool keeps everything aligned, and all you need to do is put your rivet gun on top of here to drive the rivet. So that's another advantage of this tool over the DRDT, is you can rivet with this tool as well. So I just wanted to point that out first. Then we're going to set up to actually do dimpling with the tool. So again, the 401 set holder in the bottom, male dimple die in the bottom, female, and then the ram. Now we have a spring on here that we set so that it holds the ram up slightly from the material, so you don't have to lift it up every time. So I'm just using a standard, what is this one? 12-ounce ball peen hammer. This is a dead blow, but it doesn't need to be. You want to use a steel-faced hammer with the C-frame. It gives a better impact. It doesn't absorb as much of the force, and you have a better impact into the material. You also want to make sure that your C-frame is set up over a table leg. So if you're doing what most people do and dimpling long wing skins with the C-frame in the middle of the table, you want to make sure to prop up the middle of the table from below somehow. So you're supporting it with as much force as possible. What happens on a table like this, where the table legs are clear out to the side, you provide that impact and the table absorbs a lot of the force. So people call and say, why am I not getting good dimples? And that's the first question. Are you doing it over a solid surface or have a solid table? So because this video table is set up the way it is, I'm going to have to go clear over to the side here to dimple these pieces so that I get over the leg. Now, one thing people are worried about with the C-frame is that it's not as repeatable as the DRDT. But usually with a couple dozen rivets, you get to the point where everyone is exactly the same. Now with the impact tool, you're going to be hitting it at least twice. The first one kind of seats the dimple, and the second one, or the first one kind of makes the dimple, and the second one seats it, gets it just right. So you'll hear a tone change. When the tone changes on the second one, you know that it's done. Sometimes it takes another third hit, depending on how used to the table setup you are, how the thickness of the skins and those kind of things. But it's really easy to get the knack down, so to speak, after you've just done, a few. Okay, so I'm going to put the outside of the material down and hold down on the C-frame ram as I strike it. So the second one wasn't quite the tone change that I was looking for, so I hit it a third time. There we go. And then you can take and just hold your skin up to a reflection, like light bulbs in the ceiling work really well. And then you can see that the skin has come back to being exactly flat afterwards. So the quality of the dimples that are made with both the C-frame and the DRDT are similar. There's advantages to the C-frame in that it can be used for riveting, and there's advantages of the DRDT that it's quiet. So another thing to keep in mind is the difference between the quick build kits and the standard kits. The quick build kits, you'll have the tail, the empennage structure to do, and one of each wing skin to dimple. The rest of it's already done in the quick build kit. So if you have a buddies that you can borrow, that's a good thing to do for those few skins that you have to dimple. I'll also keep in mind that on the RV10 and the 14, the empennage cone comes with the empennage kit. So that's something that you have to build even with the quick build kit. So those are a lot of skins and a lot of dimples that you'll have to do. If you have any questions, just give me a call. Thanks.